Okay, let's officially open the November 16th Board of Selectmen meeting at 6:30 PM. Josh, you want to take the opening comments?
Josh is frozen or can hear us.
Okay,
Josh, can you hear us, Josh?
he was. All right, want to get started?
I can do that, Gene, while we're waiting for Josh.
Here he is now, logging on, kid delays.
That was me. Oh, there's Josh.
There he is.
I still don't think he can hear us.
Let me try that. Someone say something?
Okay.
Can you hear us, Josh?
Okay, now I can.
Okay.
Maybe my speaker was not. I don't know. I like to use this auxiliary speaker, so let me see. One more sound check.
One more.
We're on.
Nope. All right, I'm gonna forego my speaker.
Opening comments. Mr. Antrim.
Okay, some opening comments, some announcements here. Curbside leaf pickup every Monday in November. Leaves must be in biodegradable bags only. No open barrels, roots, root balls, or branches larger than 4 inches in diameter. Bags must be out by 7 a.m. The compost area is open on Wednesdays and Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. A 2022 resident sticker is required. Visit nahant.org for a list of accepted materials. There is a vacancy on the Conservation Commission. Send letters of interest to Kate Taylor at nahant.org. We really would like to see some applications for the Conservation Commission. They're doing some very important work, and they're down one member now. So I would urge anybody that has interest to submit their letter to Kate Taylor at nahant.org. Textiles and mattress ban went into effect on November 1st, 2022. Visit the trash recycling page at nahant.org for instructions and information. And I'll just add that that was a statewide ban, not exclusive to Nahant. The real estate bills are due December 1st, 2022. Call the Treasurer Collector's office with any questions. The town hall will be closed on Thursday, November 24th and Friday, November 25th in observance of the Thanksgiving holiday. The annual Christmas parade fundraiser, Saturday, December 10th, starting at 6 p.m. at the Thai's restaurant. So I think that's
Any other
on December 10th, yes.
Any other opening comments?
I have nothing at this point, Mr. Chairman. I'm all set.
Okay, would you take on business?
I do, Mr. Chairman, I do if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
Last week, we were joined by our health nurse, Anna McNicholas, and you had asked about potential clinic in Nahant for booster shots.
Yes.
COVID booster shots. And she went right to work and got it scheduled. But we didn't have time to add it to the agenda. So it will be Wednesday, December 14th at the town hall from 4 to 6 p.m. We will publicize that, and we have a meeting the Wednesday prior, so we can add her to the agenda and push it out through that meeting as well. But she was able to work with Lynn pretty quickly, put the registration together, got all the details squared away. So we will be hosting a booster clinic Wednesday, December 14th from 4 to 6 p.m. at the Nahant Town Hall.
And that'll go on the website?
Yes.
That's great. Thank her, please. That's awesome.
I did.
I'm sure. Okay, new business, Mr. Cullinane.
Okay, we have some appointments to the Cultural Council. The way I'm looking at this, Tony, I'm making a motion for each individual. Is that Is that
I
correct?
think you can make one, I think you can make one motion to appoint all 4 individuals that submitted an application.
Okay, I'll do that then. I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to appoint Katharina Radberger, Peg Curran, Ken Torino, and Tanya Blake. I hope I pronounced that right. To the Cultural Council.
Second,
So I missed that. Was that all 4 names?
Yes.
Okay.
all 4 names, yeah. Motion made and seconded. Discussion?
Well, I'm grateful for all 4 of these folks for volunteering. Katerina and Tanya, I see are both accomplished musicians. That's great. And Peg's already been helping out for several months. And I think Ken needs no introduction to most people. So super happy about that. I see Peg and Katerina are on the line. So thank you both very much. And to approve these 4 candidates that will make the council full at 7 members.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank these 4 members, and hopefully we can allow them to introduce themselves in a minute. But I also want to take a moment to thank Tim Walsh for all the years that he put in to the Cultural Council. How many years was it, Tony? Did he serve approximately?
It was like 25.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
So he really did a great job, and I really appreciate all the work that he did regarding the council. So I look forward to getting some new blood, and I'm sure we'll be in for some exciting times.
Likewise, my thanks to Jim. He's always done a great job with any project that he's undertaken.
Yeah, with a lot of enthusiasm. So that's nice.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I do appreciate Jim's efforts.
Would any of the new appointees like to say anything?
You just unmute yourself if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone. This is really an honor, and I'm very excited about this and looking forward to hopefully be contributing to the Nahant Cultural Council. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Really excited.
That's great.
And this is Peg Curran, and I completely agree. I think it's the Cultural Council offers a great opportunity to use state funds to help our citizenship, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Peg.
I see Vi is on as well. Hi, Vi.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, so the other 2, Ken Torino is at a board meeting for the House of the Seven Gables. He's on the board there. Sorry, there's no light on me. He's on the board of the House of the Seven Gables. So he's at a board meeting tonight. And Tanya's performing right now, playing her piano. So they apologize for not being here tonight. But I'm very excited about the future of the Cultural Council. And I'm grateful for everything Jim has done all these years to bring music to us in Nahant.
Thank you. Okay, motion made and seconded. Roll call vote.
Josh Antrim,
Mark Cullen and I.
Gene Canty, aye.
Okay, we have some event requests to approve. Let's see. I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the following event requests. The annual Johnson School PTO Christmas tree sale at Lowlands parking lot from November 25th, 2022 to December 18th, 2022 on Thursdays and Fridays from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. and Saturdays and Sundays from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. And the annual Freezing for a Reason Polar Plunge on Sunday, January 1st, 2023, starting at 11 a.m. at Short Beach behind the Coast Guard Station.
seconded.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion?
Sounds like fun.
We're all gonna be there for the freezing for a reason.
I'm going after you, Gene.
I'll ride piggyback on your shoulders, Gene. Don't though.
Okay, motion made and seconded, roll call vote.
Josh Antrim, aye.
Mark Cullen and I.
Gene Canty, aye. Ongoing business. Tony, you want to give us a little briefing on 9 Little Nahant Road?
I'm gonna let Dan really take the bulk of it. There's an auction. I think it's scheduled, is it for this weekend, Dan?
Tuesday, 10 o'clock, the 22nd. I'll have the date
Yeah,
right. And it is the auction that was supposed to happen earlier in the year. We are in a much better position now than we were then because we got HUD's attention. And we nearly brokered a deal when we thought we had a 1.325 offer on the horizon, but that did not come to fruition. So we are working with HUD to create a memorandum of understanding that basically says no matter what comes out of this auction, we're going to be able to split the proceeds 76% versus 24%, which was essentially the breakdown that we agreed to when we had that 1.325 offer. And that's after any sort of sales fees come into play, commissioner fees, realtor fees, a stamp fee, things like that. So the reason why we're not entering a full-fledged agreement at this point is because we don't know what's going to happen on Tuesday. Anything can happen. It could go for $1 million, 1.7, which would make everyone happy, which is probably not going to happen, but it could. Or it could be something between 1.7 and 1.136. 1.136 is the floor of the sale. Nothing could sell for below that on Tuesday or auction off on Tuesday. So if it comes somewhere in between there, that would be great. If it does not sell on Tuesday, then HUD essentially takes possession of it. They don't purchase it. They purchase it on paper, but there's not actually money exchanged. They put it into their inventory and they decide the best thing to do with it in terms of offloading it at that point. So hopefully it won't come to that. I have let all of the potential buyers that we had about 3 sort of on the hook. I let them all know that there's an auction on Tuesday, and if they're interested to speak up. So hopefully that'll generate some attention. And it certainly has much more attention now than it did 8 months ago. So there's a really good chance that we're going to see a nice return. Well, not a return, but a recoupment of a good portion of what we are owed in terms of principal and interest.
Dan, if they take it over HUD, does that eliminate us altogether? Is there any options for us?
No. So I've been in touch with HUD and I sent Tony a copy of what we're talking about. So we're all on the same page. I try to get them to agree to something a bit more than I thought they would. But they are going to, I think, I'll talk to Tony about this in a bit, but I think they're willing to basically say we can split it 76%, 24%. And they know this already. So this is not some sort of produce conversation anyone's having. So that's why we can't go into the executive session, to be honest, because they already know. I was hoping we could make that split a bit better for us, but they sort of balked on that. Because I was hoping to go 50-50 if it went below 1.136, but they sort of balked at that. I said, why don't we just keep the same percentages all throughout? So I think even if it does sell after the auction, maybe for something less than 1.136, we're still going to get a cut. And we can make that a firm agreement once the auction passes and our vision is a bit clearer.
It was 65-35 at one point, wasn't it?
I don't know what iteration of negotiations you're thinking of. I know we finalized it we were about to finalize it based on the offer at 76% versus 24%.
Okay.
So at one point, yeah, we may have gone to them, but that may have been a counter or something. I don't recall at the moment, to be quite frank.
It'd be nice just to get that 25% out of it.
Yeah, I agree. It's a nice little chunk of change. There's no doubt about it. That should cover our principal and dig in a bit to the interest, if I recall. Yeah, we're owed 526, 509 as of Tuesday. Most of that, or much of that, is interest.
So that's on the 22nd?
Yes, 10 o'clock. And I believe it's at the site, if I recall correctly.
Thank you.
thanks for the summary, Dan. And I just wanted to remind anybody that's listening that, you know, the work that was done last February, March, and April, as Dan alluded to, put us in a much better position for today. As a reminder, HUD's initial offer to the town of Nahant was $10,000. So through hard work, especially on the part of Dan Script, we've gone from $10,000 to presumably 24% of whatever the total sale price is. So thanks for that effort, Dan, and fellow board members, and Tony.
Yeah, there's a bunch of people involved. Wasn't certain.
Yeah. No, but it's just, and I think, you know, it sounds almost certain that if and when the house sells, we will recover the principal. Maybe not all the interest and penalties and that kind of thing, but it sounds to me like it's almost certain we'll get all the principal.
Yeah, I agree. Josh.
Hey, Dan, we did the block and you carried the ball.
Watch out for Tony somewhere because he was a linebacker. So
Yeah, just to refresh my memory here. So the state has signed off on this for us, right?
signed off on what?
Uh,
Well, they signed off on our abatement request based on the previous offer. So I don't know, Dan, we're probably gonna have to go back to them, right?
Yeah. Unless we can recoup all the principal interest, we're gonna have to go back to them and seek an abatement, which shouldn't be a problem. We got the abatement earlier. We're even on stronger ground saying, hey, we went through the auction already. There's really nothing left in the estate. So that's a more typical reason for an abatement. I don't expect a problem with that at all.
okay, thanks, Dan.
Sure.
Thanks, Tony.
Okay, no further discussion on 9 Little Nahant. Housing Plan Committee status, Mr. Cullinan.
I'll let Tony start it and I'll jump in after if you want, Tony.
Yeah, we had our first meeting last Wednesday. It was probably, I think it was like a 2.5-hour meeting. It was a really good start to the process. I would say that I came out of that meeting like very encouraged by the input and the enthusiasm of the members of the committee, and really happy with, the experience and, knowledge base that we're going to be getting from MAPC, not only from the technical assistance in how housing plans work and things of that nature, but also the community involvement, experience that they are going to bring to the table, because we know that this is going to be a robust process, public process. Today, we created a new landing page on the Nahant.org website for the Housing Plan Committee with some background information, membership information. We also created an email, which is HPAC, Housing Plan Advisory Committee. It's HPAC@nahant.org, which is on that page. So for any residents that want to, communicate with the committee, they can email them at hpac@nahant.org. And MAPC will be creating their own website for this process, which will link once that gets launched, we'll link it to the Nahant.org page too.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. I'm excited to be a member of this committee. As Tony said, all of the members seem really excited and ready to roll up their sleeves and get involved. As Tony mentioned, it's going to be a robust community-wide sort of process, and I really encourage everybody in the community to get involved. There'll be public forums, there will be focus groups, there may be some surveys, but everybody needs to get involved, because the future of Nahant in terms of its housing plans and perhaps its zoning will depend on a lot of the recommendations that will come out of this committee. So it's a very, very important committee. I encourage everybody to get involved. And I'm encouraged with our consultants. They've been through this for a number of communities, including some of our neighbors like Swampscott. So I'm excited. I see that Michelle Capano is on, Tony. She's a member of the committee. I don't know if she has anything to say at this point.
Yeah. Please, Michelle, if you have anything to add.
Hi, good evening. Thanks, Mark. No, our first meeting was really productive. I think I'm encouraged and excited. And as Mark said, there's a tremendous amount of knowledge on the committee and many vast experiences. It is going to take a complete community effort. And I think once we start having those listening sessions with the public and hearing from them, their feedback and certainly ideas, it's going to help generate how this plan will turn out. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, there was an interesting stat mentioned during that meeting, Mr. Chairman. I think it was somewhere. Do you guys remember what the percentage was of, technically low income households?
40%.
40%.
Yeah, 40% of the Nahant residents would qualify for affordable housing under these guidelines.
But
Yeah.
remember, also coming out of that was based on 2010 census. So next year, when the 2020 census is released, that data is going to change because it was based on an income of $94,000. And so they took, I think it was 65% of that to hit that 40% threshold.
Yeah, I think it's the formula is 80% of the local median household income.
That's
And
correct.
under 80% qualifies as affordable, right?
Yeah, what I got from that stat was, for a lot of households in Nahant, if they weren't generational, they may not afford to be able to purchase a home in Nahant or maintain a home in Nahant. So that was kind of an eye-opening data point to me.
Hey, Mark, just a quick question. How will this dovetail with the other two committees, the planning board and the short-term rental committee? Are you going to absorb some of that or separate that out and just work in one direction?
Yeah, I mean, my feeling is that there may be some interconnection between a number of committees in the town as we go through this process. But I think what's important is for the housing committee to get through its plan and then to take its recommendations and plan and pass it on to those other committees in town for their review and comment and input as we go forward. Tony, I don't know if you're thinking any differently than that, but.
No, I completely agree. I don't, the plan, there's Michelle is an alternate member of the planning board, and Pat Riley, a sitting member, an elected member of the planning board, are both on the committee. So we'll have, pretty good representation there. And certainly if any type of zoning impact recommendation comes from the process of the housing plan, it's going to end up, in front of the planning board. So it's great to have both of them on the committee. And Housing Authority is represented, Community Preservation Committee is represented, as some of their funds can be used towards housing needs. School Committee is represented as well, which is extremely important. Of course, Board of Selectmen through Mark. Zoning Board of Appeals is represented on the committee as well. So we have a lot of different committees providing input on this committee itself.
Excellent. Any further discussion?
The next meeting hasn't been scheduled yet, but when it does, we'll put it online. we'll advertise it, take the lead from MAPC on how to push that next step of the process as best as possible. But we don't have a date yet.
Yeah, I was listening to most of that meeting, and I was impressed by the MAPC folks. They've obviously been through this before, and I think, you know, they're going to be a great help guiding us through this process.
Now, are they available to this all the way through?
Yes.
That's great. Okay, Mark, anything further?
No, not at all. I think as we try to roll this out to the public in terms of public forums and focus groups, we can probably utilize different methods to get the word out, including the electronic signboard and those types of things, Tony. Because as Michelle said, I think it's important that we engage the entire community in this effort, because it's going to impact all of us in the future.
Hey, Mark, thanks for a great rollout. Great to get that started the way you've put it together. Any other comments? Any discussion? Tony, you want to talk about budget development?
Yes. You know, November 16th here. So I personally, I already feel behind, you know, just putting this schedule together. But I'll share it on my screen. There's some internal dates that are not on this screen. You know, the board, myself and Allison are, you know, I've already started speaking with the department heads. Next week we'll be providing them the schedule and some preliminary documents for them to fill out. Our first step in building this process is receiving their requests for capital needs, for budgetary needs. I've also initiated meetings with our unions whose contracts are up at the end of this fiscal year. So the budget that we vote on in May is for next fiscal year. So I'd like to try to get that squared away so that we can have accurate personnel numbers in our budget. As you probably recall, you know, a few months ago, Allison had already completed a financial forecast, which is extremely helpful for this process and for the union negotiating. And she's in the process of certifying free cash. So there's a number of different reports and things that she has to put together for the Department of Revenue to get that certified. So it's a lot of information collection over the next few weeks here, and then start putting together our initial draft. But this schedule that's on your screen is more of like external dates. Mark, I see you squinting. Let me zoom in a little bit. Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
So I spoke, the Community Preservation Committee had their first meeting last week. They have a preliminary date of grant applications being due Friday, January 27th. The application will be posted, I think, early December. So there'll be about a month and a half to 2 months for CPC applications to be put together and submitted to the committee. As always, January 31st is the deadline for citizen petition, written summaries of any citizen petition, and committee requests other than CPC are due January 31st for warrant articles. And then the rest of the schedule really works backwards from Saturday, May 20th, the date of town meeting. So Wednesday, February 15th will be when we send over our initial draft of our budget and warrant to the Finance Committee, which gives them 8 weeks to review have some they can start meetings before this date, but it gives them 8 weeks to kind of review our budget, review our warrant articles, and prepare their recommendations for town meeting. Then their book needs to be finalized and sent to the printer by Friday, April 14th, which means between February 15th and April 14th, we, the Board of Selectmen, will open and close the warrant to make some changes, adjustments, things of that nature. We likely need to have a final draft provided to them 2 weeks or so before April 14th, so that they really can finalize those last bits of recommendations. We don't want to send them a new article 2 weeks before they have to provide a recommendation and enter it into the book. And then 14 days prior to annual town meeting, we have to post the town warrant. Saturday is technically the day, but we'll do it on the Friday, the day before. And then books from the Finance Committee have to be on the doorsteps of all voters by Saturday, May 13th. Again, we'll schedule this so that it gets done by Friday, May 12th. And then the meeting will be May 20th. And a potential day 2, if it were to be needed, would be on Monday, May 22nd.
Thanks. Are you done, Tony?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for putting this together. I'd like to point out that these are all deadlines. So, for example, anybody wishing to submit a CPC grant, that's a deadline, the January 27th. Probably helps your case to get it in sooner than that. Sometimes they need editing and refinement and the suggestions from the CPC committee. So get it in earlier if possible. Similarly with citizens petitions for the warrant article, that January 31st is a deadline, but it's always a good idea to get things in a little bit earlier if possible. And then
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you for a moment?
yeah.
On citizen petitions, you know, it's always a good idea to run those, even if you're seeking signature, that method of including a warrant article, it's always a good idea to run it by us.
Yeah.
Because once you get all those signatures, the language submitted is the language that has to go into the warrant. We do not have the power to make corrections that, you know, could have a drastic impact on your article. And then in the past, you know, we've had those issues, and what ends up happening is we end up submitting an article that's almost identical, but a little bit different, but it's the same mindset. And then you have 2 articles on the warrant, and you have to stand up and withdraw the other one. So it becomes a technical issue, procedural issue. So if you're thinking about doing something like that, you can certainly bring it to me. I can consult with Dan, you know, ahead of time before you start getting signatures.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Tony. Thanks for bringing that up. I know sometimes Dan has suggestions about the legal wording of these articles and things like that. So that's a great suggestion. And we've had that instance in a couple of recent town meetings where we had a citizen petition and we had to draft a completely separate article and then, you know, indefinitely postpone on one so that we could use the one that's written legally correctly. Yeah. So yeah, good suggestion.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you. You still were going. You had.
Oh, yeah. So my second point was sort of the as you referred to internal and external. I'm kind of interested in the internal part of it. When you might be able to have a draft that we could take a look at early on and perhaps have a joint meeting with FinCom or have a representative from the Board of Selectmen along with you meet with FinCom, you know, sort of as early as possible in this process. So to get us on the same page and, you know, exchange some ideas early on. So that's not reflected here, but I'd like to get that in motion.
I'm sure we could attend a finance committee meeting. They've started meeting, not super regularly, but they've had 2 meetings so far. So we could join one of their meetings and just talk schedule, not numbers, but we could talk schedule, and other items like that. I'll get back to you on a date by which we could have like a preliminary budget prepared for you.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe it's something you could review with us individually. It's just, once you get your inputs from department heads and you and Allison put your heads together, definitely be interested in seeing that on the early side.
Mhm. Part of some of the difficulty is that free cash doesn't get certified sometimes until late January, early February. Now, we typically are using free cash for, one-time capital needs, stabilization, OPEB, debt payment, that sort of thing. So, we might have a budget that's more, that isn't completed, but it's more geared towards like the other types of, the personnel costs and contractual obligations and things of that nature, because that's like plugging those numbers in that we have to do, we already know we have that obligation that we have to meet. But the other kind of up in the air element is the union contract. So,
including.
but yeah, I'll sit down with each of you sooner than later about that process.
Yeah, there are a lot of unknowns that lead right up almost close to town meeting, including state aid sometimes, so. But as Josh said, if, I guess technically this is a budget it's a Board of Selectmen budget that you and Allison prepare. And if you need us at any of the meetings, then we can do it as a joint meeting, or you can include one of us individually to join you and support you. So just let us know how we can help.
Absolutely.
One other question is the finance committee, they have a complete roster of members?
I think they're down one member. It's a town moderator appointed position. And I think they're down one member.
Would you be able to check into that and let the moderator know, Tony?
Yeah, yep. I think he probably knows better than I, but I'll double check it. Anyways, it's good to make sure that they have a full roster.
Any further discussion? Hey, can I dip back into the housing for just 1 second? My question would be this: is it too lofty a goal to think that we can put the short-term housing, this housing committee's plans and the planning boards in for the town meeting?
I don't think the housing committee, the housing production plan will be ready for this town meeting, no.
Okay. It's just a question that's been asked.
So Josh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned short-term. They're 2 different things. Short-term rental and the housing production plan are 2 different things. It's possible that the short-term rental committee may have something for this town meeting. In fact, Dan, on my list to talk to you about is, as I was preparing this budget schedule, I thought it'd be a good idea to prepare the a schedule for the short-term rental committee.
Okay.
If they do seek to include some sort of bylaw, they need to get it to the Board of Selectmen. If it impacts zoning, if it triggers zoning at all, it's gonna have to go to the planning board.
Right.
So I want to create that schedule as well.
Okay.
So I want to check in with you. So the answer, Mr. Chairman, is short-term rental bylaw, maybe. Housing production plan and 3A multifamily zoning, unlikely.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, I just, I certainly would like to see the short-term rental bylaws be available for this next annual town meeting. I hope they can establish that as a goal and achieve that goal. I know it's a tough subject for sure, but there are a lot of towns that have these bylaws in place and provide a good template or starting point. And I don't know, whatever we can do to help them achieve the goal of getting on this year's warrant, I think we should do.
Dan, you've attended a number of those meetings and
Yes.
provided them some counsel.
Right.
I know you don't have like an update prepared, but what's your feeling? Do you think it's possible? Do you think they're far enough along?
Yes, it's possible. I think they are far enough along, but they have to start taking some votes. They haven't voted on anything yet. They're just sort of doing a lot of talking. And I think they should take care of the big picture items first and then dig into the details if they need to. But I think they're on the verge of taking a vote over the next meeting or two. And to Josh's point, they have used other towns' ordinances and bylaws as examples and sort of culled out what doesn't apply to Nahant and maybe added some other things that would be more particular to Nahant. So they're making certain progress. So I think they'll have something by town meeting. I think it's important to let them know, though, they don't have to have everything by town meeting, just the big picture stuff first, if anything else, if nothing else, I should say. But it doesn't have to be a comprehensive thing just yet. They can always just make some sort of changes later, like we do with the marijuana stuff.
Right.
I've been listening in on all of those same meetings. Dan's aware of that, I'm sure. And what Dan is saying is true. They are short-term rental are close to making decisions on how to draft their bylaw. Would you suggest that, Dan?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think they are at the point now where I think they can provide a draft of what they've sort of come up with so far. I know last time they met, they talked a lot about registration, which is more really rules and regulations. It's not really bylaws, but you can put it in bylaws if you want. But I think that's an example of how they're sort of getting caught in the weeds and sort of not looking at the forest, so to speak.
Exactly.
But they're okay. They're doing a good job. They're working hard.
I mean, does the board want to send them anything, formally, or do you want to just kind of let them go through their process? Do you want to send them anything like, these are the types of things that we hope to see, or this is the timeline we hope you to abide by or try and achieve? Or do you want to just let them kind of go through their process and?
Yeah, there could be more than one article coming out of this committee. I'm envisioning. It could be rules and regulations, it could be zoning, it could be a number of different things. And as Dan said, if they don't have everything completely done, we can at least put placeholders in the warrant, and that can be edited as we get closer to the town meeting. But I would agree with Josh that I would like to see something at town meeting addressing this.
They meet again on Tuesday, the day of the auction, same day.
The zoning, if it triggers zoning, the planning board has to have a public hearing. How many days?
They have to give it 2 weeks. First of all, if it triggers zoning, it has to come to the BOS. The BOS kicks it to planning board. They need at least a 2-week period to give notice in the paper. And then after they have their hearing, I think it's 20 days they have to create a recommendation before town meeting can happen. So you reverse it all backwards. That gives you a timeline that Tony was talking about.
So if you, I'll pull up that schedule again. If, we don't know what the bylaw looks like, but if it triggers zoning, which means it would trigger the planning board. And if we wanted to include the planning board's recommendation in the book that the advisory and finance committee sends out, that means the 20 days and the plus 14, so that's 34 days before April 14th. And then plus the finance committee is going to probably want to give a recommendation too. So, you're getting into, early March, end of February that, it needs to be, that process has to start. So yeah, a lot of work to be done, but you can see how those timelines kind of apply pressure to the overall schedule.
Yeah, go start coming up quick.
I mean, I think, Tony, you just need to make them aware of what the timeline is. And so they're sensitive to it and they can be proactive.
Tony, you might even want to just simply ask where they are in the process.
I will, I'll meet with Dan, I'll put together a schedule, and I'll reach out to the chairman and ask him if he wants me to attend their next meeting to kind of go through the schedule with them.
Perfect.
Good.
Okay. Preserving East Point.
There's a couple items I just wanted to mention before we get into preserving East Point. Perhaps I should have mentioned them during opening statement, but would now be a good time, or would you rather wait until after preserving East Point?
Now's a good time.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to keep the topic of public rights of ways, paper roads, and in other town-owned land, sort of out in front of us all. Just high level. I think the sequence of events should be publicly identifying all these locations, which will help prevent future encroachments. And then the last bit, which is rectifying past encroachments. That's the hard one, but I feel like the first one, publicly identifying and thus preventing future encroachment, is relatively easy. So I know it's not on the agenda for tonight, but I just wanted to be a collective thorn in our side and keep this topic in front of us.
Where did we leave that at the last meeting?
I think what we discussed, Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, but we were going to take a look at any available funds that might be open in CP, community preservation, and if we need more, that we should begin thinking about an application to community preservation to support this effort.
Yes, and I think, so we also we were talking about a number. Josh, you had mentioned reaching out to Rockport. I don't know if you had a chance to do that, and if you haven't had a chance, I'm happy to take that off your plate if you want.
Yeah, why don't we put it on both our plates, and whoever the first one is to do it, let the other one know.
I'll add it to my list.
That works.
Because I could, maybe find out who they worked with, if they were happy with them. I could reach out to that company and, maybe see if I could get some ballpark number that, when you go, it's important that, the success of the application for a CPC grant is really based on the details you provide in that application, how much homework you do ahead of time.
Yeah.
They've really pushed back on kind of just applying for a number, and we'll see how far it takes us.
Yeah. All right, so that was one thing. And then the second item was something that maybe we've talked about a tiny bit informally, but the notion of putting conservation restrictions on all of Nahant's open spaces. I know the zoning laws are pretty good for those open spaces about restricting development and so on. And maybe we could ask Dan Script to look into whether putting conservation restriction on these open spaces provides, let's say, a little more teeth or a little more specificity to what's already in the bylaws with regard to natural resource areas. That's what I meant to say, natural resource areas.
Yeah.
Next item on the agenda is preserving East Point, and let's hope that's the last time we have to, go through a struggle to preserve our natural resource areas. So if the conservation restriction provides that certainty and coverage, something we should definitely consider. And if it research does show that it will help provide additional protections, then I would love to see that on this year's town warrant too.
Josh, thanks for bringing that up. That's kind of goes hand in hand with what we're trying to do up at East Point, but it also should encompass the entire town. That's a great thought. Thank you.
So
I know that
coincidentally,
you and I
Mark,
had a discussion about this last week and again today. Tony, do you want to jump in on this or you want me to?
I was just gonna say, we're all thinking in the same mindset because coincidentally, Mark and I, were speaking on it. And, we kind of got there through two different paths, both thinking the same way, on, as you mentioned, the northeastern item, we talked about how that is an attempt, by the town to apply a conservation restriction on the property that abuts Lodge Park. We should think about applying a conservation restriction to Lodge Park as well, to solidify that commitment.
Yeah.
We also talked about it in relationship when we were referring to the housing production plan, and there's two requirements under Chapter 40B. There's a minimum unit of affordable units, and that's 10% of your housing stock, or there's a minimum general land area of developable land. 1.5% of that needs to go to affordable housing. And we've hired Stantec to do an analysis for us as to where we are with that. It's called GLAM, General Land Area. I don't remember what the M stood for.
Measurement.
Measurement. So we're actually in the process of working with Stantec to do a GLAM analysis. And, there's areas in town that even though they might be zoned as natural resource, that might not be strong enough of a restriction to be included in the GLAM as non-developable land. And so there's certainly areas in town that, like Lodge Park, the golf course, the lowlands areas, different spots around town that, we have protected through our own local bylaws as natural resources, but even potentially a stronger protection would be a conservation restriction. And Mark, you mentioned today, exploring the idea of dedicating it as parkland to apply that Article 97 protection on it, or both.
That's a good explanation, Tony, and I think it's really something that we need to explore. I did bring up there's two ways of going about this. One is a conservation restriction. The problem with the zoning, zoning at natural resources, that zoning can change in any town meeting. Any town meeting can come in there and change it, and it could be natural resources one day, it could be commercial the next year. So we need to be more proactive in making sure that we dedicate these properties in perpetuity, I think. And one way of doing it is through a conservation easement. Another way, as I mentioned to Tony today, is to do it by designating it under Article 97 as parkland. And if you do that, then it requires a 2/3 vote of to change that. And I think there's a net zero component to this, Tony. To change that, it requires the state legislature by a vote of 2/3 to change it. And there are certainly areas in town that I feel are deserving of that. A lot of the wetlands areas, for example, the golf course, the lowlands area, maybe the compost area. And I think we need to take a close look at that and asking the town if they would be willing to place these properties or these areas as parklands, so designated.
Mark, every area you just described and then some should have that protection.
Yeah. I mean,
Particularly,
these we have to be careful at what we look at, but we should go through that process.
yeah,
Certainly the first thing that comes to my mind are areas that are clearly in the wetlands, that clearly I don't think the town wants to develop or see developed in any way. So I think it's an important exercise, very important.
Mark, you raised a really good point that I hadn't thought of, which is that the zoning is changeable at any town meeting, and so it does not provide a permanent, designating natural resource area. It doesn't provide protection forever. So, yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you raised it, and because what I'm interested in is protecting these areas forever.
and in the meantime, enforcement is tantamount to making sure or ensuring that we keep these properties, these areas non-buildable.
Yeah, truly the Green Lawn Cemetery, Town Hall, and Library are the only towns that have, only properties in town that have actual, permanent preservation restrictions on them. It's historical preservation restrictions, but as Mark said, the ultimate or the strongest protection you could provide would be one of those two or both, Article 97 or a conservation restriction. So I actually reached out to Jeff Blake, and he was going to put me in touch with Amy Questler on it. Dan, more than happy to get your help and assistance on it as well. So yeah, it's on the big board in my office as potential policy items for the upcoming town meeting.
Great. Excellent. Okay. One small item. We talked about striping. You want to give us a quick rundown on what the game plan is on that?
For the new pavement,
Yeah.
the painting, yeah, we're just waiting on weather. It's weather dependency. So it's a subcontractor through DNR, and it could be next week, it could be the week after. We're just waiting on weather. Hopefully it doesn't get so cold so fast that the paint can't be put down before winter. On the other hand, waiting till after plow season might not be a bad idea either, but we'll see. Hopefully either way I think is fine, but right now we're just waiting on the contractor to give us a date.
Okay.
Just to input on this, I have a little experience in this. I would only suggest, Tony, if you can do it, weather permitting, shortly, that would be great. If you can't, I would wait into the spring, because you don't want to do it after they put a layer of salt down. once you start out applying salt to the pavement, even if you have a nice few days afterwards, it's not going to work well.
That's a good point. Okay. Preserving East Point.
I'll give a quick review. Some of this is repeat, but just in case there's anybody new listening or anybody that needs a refresher, I'll be brief. So we have two cases: the Article 97 case, or so-called dedication case, and the eminent domain case, also known as the 80A case. With regard to the Article 97 case, there's sort of two aspects to that. One is the claim that Northeastern formally dedicated this as conservation land. That's the aspect of it that the judge ruled against that claim, that Northeastern never formally dedicated that land as conservation land. We have submitted an appeal for that. The second aspect to that case is the promissory estoppel portion, which is, I'll use my layman's term, hey, you promised you were going to keep this as conservation land, and so we proceeded on that assumption. So for example, we invested in money and time into building Lodge Park on the assumption that this was going to be conservation land, not the biggest development in Nahant's history, accompanied by a couple acres of parking lot. That promissory estoppel portion has not yet been ruled upon. There is a hearing on that on December 5th, and the agreement is that we'll get through the promissory estoppel portion before proceeding with the appeal on the other aspect of it. So that's the summary on the Article 97 case. On the eminent domain case, there was an important ruling from the judge, Judge Karp, yesterday we're still in the discovery phase, which includes getting depositions from various people. And Northeastern had asked for depositions from a pretty extensive list of people. The judge ruled yesterday that list was too extensive and limited it to four individuals that Northeastern could choose to depose. And very briefly, those individuals are either Selectman Cullinan or me from the current Board of Selectmen, either Richie Lombard, T. Taylor, or Enzo Baril from the former Board of Selectmen, either Tony Barletta or Jerry Perry from the town administrator part, and one of the people that served on the short-lived Northeastern Liaison Committee that existed for a few months about 3 years ago. So those would be the four people that would be subject to being deposed. This is a good thing, I think, for the town, because it keeps the number of people being deposed to a reasonable number. So that was that ruling came out yesterday, and then on December 14th, there's a status conference on the eminent domain case, which is really a chance for the judge to get an update on the proceedings. So it continues to move along slowly, and that's a summary of the status. And just as a reminder, because I've seen some social media comments and so on, and again, no taxpayer money has been spent on either Article 97 or eminent domain. So if you're hearing or reading differently, you're being lied to. So I would strongly encourage people to call in the citizens forum at these meetings and ask questions, or if that's too much trouble, send us an email or call us, but please don't rely on rumor mills or Facebook. If it's important to you and you want to know the truth, come to us and get the honest truth.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Josh.
Okay, any questions? Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, we can move on. Tony?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a lot of activity going on, as we mentioned, paving has been completed. With today's, by the way, I think DNR, I'm very pleased with DNR, and the work that they did. Not only was it, quick compared to, what I've seen in neighboring towns, as far as time from milling to final pavement. But I think the work that they did was great, and they were a pleasure to work with. We did, today's rain. We had one minor issue. There's the pitch to Nahant Road right across from like where Brett Henry's is a little off, where it created a puddle across the street up against the curb, and there's a drain catch basin right there. So we've already sent pictures, and they're going to come out and take a look at it and figure out what the fix is. But, for the amount of work that we had them do for that one small issue, I'm very pleased with the work that they did.
That was,
You heard of any other issues around town? I think it came out pretty good.
it was, it was a little bit painful during the week or so where all the roads were chewed up and, but it looks great now. So short-term pain for long-term gain, I guess.
Yes, I will apologize for not thinking about impacts on election day. I know it was somewhat difficult to navigate, get to the town hall on election day, but I know our police officers were helping out and getting people there, but I didn't think that one fully through, and if I could go back, I would have done it on Wednesday instead of Tuesday, but we got through it.
Police did a great job.
Yes, they did. Thank you. As you can see too, there's a lot of National Grid work going on around town. Zach is on top of them. He's pressing them very hard about, restoration, lay down areas, cleanliness, timeliness. We're having another big conversation with them soon about some future work that they want to accomplish. Zach met with them the other day about Castle Road, and they will be coming back. They'll be doing 6-foot milling coverage over the trenches on Castle Road, and cutting out the entire section of the intersection at Nahant Road. So they'll do that before winter. And then we have some other work that we want to do on Castle Road. And then Castle Road will be ready to potentially be paved next year. But there's other work on, Greystone Road. That needs a full paving, but they're doing the work now. So they'll do a 6-foot wide trench restoration on that to get through the winter time. And then next year we'll be getting the Greystone Road as well. But there's a number of other streets they're looking to get into as well because we're future paving or underground utility work to be done. But we're staying on top of them, and Zach's doing a good job there. Tomorrow through next week, Asplin will be in town doing tree trimming around power lines on behalf of National Grid. They're not our contractor, but they are, consulting with Zach as far as process and, maybe certain areas that might need more attention than others. Zach, I believe, has asked them to start at East Point and kind of work their way through town from the far end. I know Tri-Mountain Road is a big one for us. The fence on the left side of Tri-Mountain Road as you're heading down towards Bailey's Hill, and all that tree, all that vegetation growing, over the fence and into the wires is a point of focus for Zach and I. But they'll be in over the next week doing that work. The Gioso, our sewer contractor, completed the bypass project at Ward Road yesterday, which sets us up for the Ward Road pump station work that we'll be doing. So that part of their project is done. They're also really putting a full court press on removing material from the compost yard. They had a lot of trucks in town today removing material from there.
Tony, I've got a question on that. I did get on, as I mentioned to you today, I went down and looked at that bypass yesterday. It's impressive. Do we plan on using the new pumps we have for that bypass, or will there be a different pump?
Different pump.
Okay.
Not only because of the timing, but because we really, those are dedicated to dewatering salt water. And, I don't want to get into potentially issues with the pumps dealing with solids in the wastewater stream. So,
Okay.
and I don't know if they would be enough.
Yeah, I'm not sure they would be. I don't think they would be, but
Tomorrow, DPW, weather dependent, but tomorrow the plan is tomorrow and Friday, DPW and Grenice will be working on a water leak down at the intersection of Castleway and Fox Hill Road, taking advantage of Fox Hill Road being closed anyways because of the National Grid work. And tomorrow through next week, the coastal survey company that we hired through emergency management will be doing their coastal drone flights around town starting tomorrow. And they'll be basically camera working the entire coastline so that they can start to develop that baseline of material for us for when we deal with potential, hopefully not, but potential future storms and FEMA. That's it. That's what I got. Thank you.
Josh, you wanting to speak?
No, I just coughed.
Tony,
That's everything. Thank you.
Citizens Forum.
Looks like it's up to Michelle.
I have nothing tonight. Thank you.
Sadly, the less participants we have in our Zoom meetings does that mean we're doing a good job, or people are sick of listening to us?
I think everybody's on the Concom meeting. I think they're all on the Concom meeting.
That's a good question.
We're streaming to the local TV channel, so I think a lot of people tune in that way.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad.
Let's check the Nielsen ratings. See how we did.
So, do we have anybody out there?
No one else.
No one else.
Dan, you're a resident.
Me?
Yeah.
No, we're good to go. I think the lack of people attending means that there are not a lot of concerns out there that are really hot topics. So I think it's a good sign. Just compare this to when Northeastern was hot. The meeting would be 45 people and you'd have 10 people in line for Citizens Forum. I think we're on the other side of that, which is great.
Yeah, I remember Zoom meetings with over 100 on there. So
Yeah, it was interesting.
So Dan, do we need a motion to close out a meeting?
Yeah, you do need a motion to close. You don't need a motion to open because you think about it, it doesn't make any sense. There is no meeting to render a motion. So, but now that there is a meeting, there is a motion to close. You're right, absolutely.
Whatever you're ready, boss.
Did you just make a motion?
No, but I can. I move that the Board of Selectmen meeting be closed.
seconded.
Motion made and seconded. Roll call vote.
Josh Antrim, aye.
Mark Cullen, aye.
Gene Canty, aye.
All right, good night, everyone.